Welcome to the Idea Climbing Podcast. The power of face-to-face networking is not to be ignored in today's digital age. If you want to build more meaningful relationships, it's got to be included in your marketing strategy. I discuss how to do that in this episode with my guest, Brian Wallace. Brian is the founder of NowSourcing, an industry-leading content marketing agency that makes the world's ideas simple, visual, and influential. Brian has been named a Google Small Business Advisor for 2016 to the present, joined the South by Southwest Advisory Board in 2019 and still serves on it, and became a small to medium business advisor for Lexmark in 2023. He is the co-founder for the Innovate Summit, which launched in May of 2024. We dive into topics such as how to introduce yourself in a different way than the traditional elevator pitch, how to balance making new connections with fostering existing relationships, the one thing above all else that you need to do to be successful at face-to-face networking, and more golden nuggets of advice. You're going to love this show. Brian, thank you for making the time to do the Idea Climbing Podcast. I appreciate you.
Likewise, Mark. I always appreciate the opportunity and always get to chat. We might as well bring everybody into the conversation, man.
Exactly. And we're going to talk about the power of face-to-face networking. Before we get into some of the strategies and tips, the tricks, as far as face-to-face networking, you teach it. You got pretty darn good at it. What is your story? Why is it important to you?
So as we get further and further at the edge of a cliff that AI is going to make everything better and replace everything, and we have everything. I'm not taking a phone call. I'm just using this as a prop. As you know, we have the totality of the human experience in our pocket. What do? We just doom scroll and look at like birds with arms and cats on treadmills and stuff, or worse. And we can perfect our sales pitches and our elevator pitches and all that. And we can make our AI avatars, and it's not interesting. What people need to understand is instead of running away to humanity, away from humanity and trying to do everything at scale, instead of just building new connections on LinkedIn like it's a video game, when was the last time any of you checked on somebody you've known for a decade, for a year back, 2 years back? I can guarantee everybody right now that like March of 2020, there's probably 500 LinkedIn connections and messages that you forgot because you were figuring out how to do life because there was this tidal wave that kind of kept us inside for a while. And the reason I bring that up is because there was a dictionary, like Merriam-Webster, they come out with their word of the year. They came out with goblin mode that year, which basically meant that you don't take showers anymore and you just sit inside. You don't comb your hair. You don't go out. You don't do showers. You sit in sweatpants. And we just turn into goblins, our lowest echelon of society. And we forgot how to make eye contact. We forgot how to shake hands. We forgot how to be human. And maybe the world needs to get better at being human. Stop selling everybody. Stop coming up with dumb sales pitches. And the main thing, and I'm sure we'll dive into this a lot, is to try to figure out how to be the most interesting person in the room, or at least your most interesting self. That doesn't mean you have to lie. That doesn't mean that you have to grandstand or be super annoying. It just means that instead of, hello, how do you like sports ball? How is the weather? If you're both in the same place, I remember giving a lecture about this, and it was like the middle of the summer in a very hot location. So I'm saying to everybody, it's like, what are you going to say? How's the weather? It's hot. Are you not also melting? Like, what's happening here? Come up with better stuff. I even remember once I was at a conference, a very large conference, and I think I was getting a little bit special and I get a little more interesting and unhinged as some of the days go on. And I think somebody's like, so where are you from? Blah, blah, blah. I think I literally said to the guy, could you just ask a better question? Now, some people would get insulted, but I'm pretty sure he said like, what? And then I had the opportunity to try. And again, that's not being an egomaniac or a narcissist or a crazy person. We just don't need dumb party tricks instead of connecting as humans. And that is what is wrong with the world.
Well, you're touching on it big time. I'd love to do a little bit of a deeper dive. Before we talk into what you should do, what are people doing wrong? What shouldn't you be doing? And when it comes to, we'll stick with face-to-face networking. What shouldn't you be doing?
So let's start by unpacking the word networking, because I think there's a lot of trauma and there's a lot of misuse and misunderstanding behind and beyond that word. because a lot of people, depending on your personality type, how you show up in business, if you're introverted or extroverted, if you're in sales or a different career, networking means different things to different people. So let's just examine the game. We're at any kind of conference, any kind of meetup, whatever, and then part of the agenda is networking. So what do we automatically think? We better come armed to the teeth with a fancy suit and a bunch of business cards and have LinkedIn handed out or whatever our app of the day is or whatever. And we're just speed dating. And we run around in this horrible cutthroat way. And we're just like focused on sales and transactions instead of trying to make an impression. But we know by a lot of people saying this over and over, I don't even remember who originally said it anymore, but people buy, people interact, people engage with the people that they know, like, and trust. It is not rocket science. You've endless choices in the world to do business with whoever you want across the world that you could talk to in a snap. Why am I going to work with somebody that I don't know? Why would I work with somebody that I don't like? And why would I work with somebody that I don't trust? Maybe if your toilet is overflowing and it's midnight, maybe I'm not so picky and I just need the toilet messed up so I don't, get divorced or something. And I don't want sewage on my floor. But aside from that, in a normal situation, we actually have choices. So instead of these dumb networking games where you try to meet people as fast as possible with terrible messages, there is a way to evolve that conversation. So people think networking is bad because they think that it's just salesy and superficial. But I think if they understood the true art and science of networking, they wouldn't hate it so much. It's also like a thing that let's say you're just in a room and it isn't one-on-ones. So sometimes you'll have like these type A extroverts that are just waiting for you to have a pause in conversation so they can talk more and not listen. That's not networking. That's just a person being special, right? You don't have to be like that. It is a skill that can be finely honed. You go to the gym, I haven't so much. I walk a lot. I get my 10,000 steps in. But this is something in your brain that you can flex as a muscle.
So how do you go along the spectrum of know, like, and trust? Because it seems like, but that takes time. And people want that shortcut of, oh, here's my card you want to buy from me. How do you successfully move along the spectrum of know, like, and trust?
Sure. So there's a bunch of books in your background. Maybe one of them has to do with a particular book called The Go-Giver, which I'm sure you're familiar with. So Bob Burg and a few other very smart people over the years have developed what I'm about to encapsulate here. So you hear the words go-giver, but first your brain is like, oh, a go-getter. So what's a go-getter? A go-getter is that annoying guy at all the networking things where they're just being so over the top, so salesy, no trust built. And they think that it's just a numbers game and cold call 1,000 people and maybe somebody will go for it. If that's your zone, great. I'm not picking on that, but I think that there's a better use of your time that can be more reflective and thoughtful for everybody around you. So you're not so much of a jerk when you're showing up at some of these things. So a go-giver, instead of taking first, is giving, right? Zig Ziglar said that nobody cares about what you know until you care about them. I think I'm getting that right.
Close enough. I remember that one.
Yeah, something like that. I'm pretty sure that's it, or 95% of it. So people are interested when you care about them. And if you're a nice, natural thinking human, why can't you care about other people? If you want somebody to do business with you, you don't have to get married here, but you should at least have a cordial relationship. And you should be useful and you should be resourceful. I give a lot of talks around the world where I talk about being the most interesting man in the room. And I don't mean that as being an egomaniac. I just mean that as if you're really interesting, you're going to leave this indelible mark in somebody's mind where it's that Brian guy was kind of cool. Maybe I should go connect with him on LinkedIn and see what he does. And then they're going down the Brian Wallace rabbit hole and they're kind of selling themselves on me. And they're like, wow, I just booked a time on your calendar and I see that you do this and that. And I have all these people to introduce and I can just say thank you. Because I bothered to at least start the dance to set the stage for something better and not talk about weather and sports ball.
So what is a appropriate or successful introduction look like? What's different than the usual elevator pitch? What do you do to get to know and hopefully get to like? How do you introduce yourself in a different kind of way?
So there's a lot of ways to approach that. I like taking the stage or running an event because if you are on stage, people hear something and it's really interesting. Or if I'm running an event, I'm automatically an interesting person because I have cultivated this gathering. But not everybody's running an event and not everybody's on stage. So let's evolve the question because that's not helpful. Because it's like, okay, Brian, well, I'm not a keynote speaker. Come on, buddy. Skip this part of the podcast. So what do you do? So I love LinkedIn. I don't like other dumb apps. I don't like bumping the phone. I don't like all these other things. I like LinkedIn. So usually when I'm meeting somebody for the first time and we're in like a room and we're all kind of gathering around, I like to be helpful and demonstrate a couple things that are in my mind. This is a really great, it's not a trick, it's not a game, but it's a really interesting way of thinking about stuff. So first, I might show people where the hidden QR code is and teach them something. And I can say, if you like going to events like this, it would be really helpful for you to know. Most people don't know it. So I've changed their game to be more accessible to every room going forward, that I'm that guy that put it in the head. So immediately I'm building value and trust. And again, not salesy. Like you see some of these guys where they're like, hey, Mark, isn't that right, Mark? What do you think, Mark? And they just like say your name 10 times. It's like, can you please stop it? Like there's got to be a human in there somehow, right? Like I'm a capitalist. I like money too, but it's not that effective because you're overdoing it. You're showing the tactics and it's gross. Okay, so one thing is I can show people the QR code. Another thing is I can show them other stuff like, here's how you leave a personalized message when I'm connecting. And I can be like, hey, Mark, it was really neat meeting you at the cybersecurity conference in Budapest or something. And then it's like at the start of the chain. So whenever we think about how we met and all that, I can go back to that in history. And then even before I connect, and I'll leave with this one and we can move on, I like to look at if we know people in common. I'll be like, oh, wow, look at these 27 connections. And instead of just saying that as a trick, I'm looking to see who I know. And I could be like, oh, wow, how do you know that person? Oh,
Yeah.
wow, I just met with this person yesterday. So immediately we could talk about like 1,000 different things instead of sure is hot in Phoenix, isn't it, Mark? Right? Like, come on. Yes, it is, Brian. Could you grow a brain next time? Yeah, there you go.
So once you meet somebody to kick the relationship off the right way, what things can you do to become likable at the next step?
So I'm going to go back to LinkedIn again.
Mhm.
So sometimes I might leave a voice note in direct message because people like the sound of my voice, which is sort of a creepy thing to say to people on the internet. But I guess is that like saying you have a face for radio? I don't know. It's usually meant as a compliment. People like the sound of my voice, so maybe I should use that. So hearing it and hearing my vocal intonation, and if I'm taking a walk and it's beautiful and sunny outside and I'm in a good mood, you can hear somebody's mood in a voice note. And I could say, Mark, it was so wonderful meeting you. I was thinking about you today. I have somebody in mind to introduce you to. I like making introductions, but I like making super targeted introductions. There are people I know that make like 10 introductions at a time. And I'm like, do you even remember my name or what I do? Why? So be really targeted with that. Or if there's something that I think they would like, or sometimes I just tell people like, I do a lot of really interesting stuff on LinkedIn. I think you would enjoy the content, right? Stuff like that.
So once you get to know somebody, then how do you build trust with people? Because I'd imagine that takes a little bit more time, or it's a different skill set to just like.
Yeah. So literally just thinking about people means the world to people because we don't know what people are going through. I mean, dude, some of the stuff that people told me during the pandemic, like we're talking about like death and suicide and all sorts of wild stuff around their lives. As much as people always want to meet new connections and people have all these little goals and to-do lists and vision boards and all this crap, and it's like, I need to meet 10 new people a day and I'm going to use sales now. It's like, do yourself a favor. Literally just reach out to people you haven't heard from in a while. Think about people that you haven't talked to in a year, 2 years, 5 years, people that have been along with you for the journey for a decade. Why would you not bother to retain the trust of stuff that you've already earned? And then they might say, It's really funny that you reached out because I just left company X and now I just got $50 million and started a startup and let's work together. You already have built that. Why not continue?
Why do you think people overlook that? Because that's a common tip or strategy that I'll hear from people like you that are just phenomenal at networking. But why do you think people are chasing a shiny object when they have 5, 10 year relationships at their hip?
Because we have a bunch of evil people that run social networks that have decided that it's a dopamine hit when you get more likes and you get more followers and you get all these little micro interactions. So we're rewarded for vanity metrics that don't matter. And we have become accustomed to not care about things that take longer to work and develop. It is always worth playing the long game. There isn't a get rich, like you're not getting rich overnight. Like it doesn't work. Okay, maybe like you play the stock market right, you get Bitcoin at the right time, but a lot of the time it doesn't work. If you've ever read about the Black Swan event,
No.
uh, oh yeah, there's an economist by the name of Nassim Taleb that talks about Black Swan. So like, I'm going to ruin the construct for you, but you could read it later. So like, people buy and sell stuff at the wrong time. So you buy low and sell high, except people buy on emotion and panic. So like the Bitcoin run. So like everybody bought it at the peak and then everybody's like, oh, this is worth too much. Let's crash it. Right. Or like there was literally stuff in like the US economy that just happened. There's all sorts of weird stuff. So people panic because sometimes there's like a once in a lifetime event that happens and it kind of changes everything. So sometimes it's better to not do that and just hang on to your position on stuff.
Have you always played the long game, or is it something you learned along your networking journey?
That's a really good question. So I think when there's up and down cycles in business, sometimes we get desperate and sometimes we are feeling like, well, we better do this. We better execute on it. I feel like I've probably had highs and lows of it, but I feel like I've been attuned to it for a while. Now, if I'm first starting out, I don't have a network, so there isn't a long game to have been played yet. I guess I've gotten better at it over the years, but I feel like it's usually my default position. And as I traverse through a lot of really interesting systems and happenings throughout the world, the more I do that, the better, because people like it. People want to be part of that action. Like I was just traveling all over the place and everybody was like watching and cheering on and like living vicariously. And they're like, it's so cool that you're traveling and it was so neat that you met this person and that person. And it gets everybody thinking. And it's really neat because they are a part of what you're doing. When people feel that level of relationship with you, it's great.
So is there a point that would you say, and it might be going to an extreme, but
Yeah.
do you ever pause as far as doing new outreach and really focus on people you already know? What does that dynamic look like? Is there a percentage, amount of time, something like that, where it's like, you know what, I don't need 10 new connections. I should probably reconnect with these people. What is the new versus already know? What does that spectrum look like for you?
So I'm kind of a weirdo. I don't have LinkedIn Sales Navigator. I don't have some highly crafted strategy where I look for a company in this business sector with this many employees and I send clever DMs to people. I don't do any of that ever. I'm not faulting people that do that, but it's not what I prefer. So I like gathering people online and especially in person, and I'll bring people in and then they'll bring friends in and I meet their friends. And then as I'm talking to my friends, old and new, other people start bringing up all sorts of introductions. And I feel like that is a much better way. It's hard and you have to like really get good at all this stuff. But the people that you know and just start to know and who they bring into your lives are truly transformative.
So are you saying, as far as networking, if I hear you right, that in and of itself sounds like a strategy? Meet friends of friends, not necessarily new people. That, am I on point with that? What are your thoughts on that approach
Correct.
versus brand new cold people?
Correct. Right. I think that if you actually break it down, nobody's truly cold if you're really kind of thinking it through. But the way I would say it is, I like to meet my first level. Let's just stick with LinkedIn metaphors and analogies and terminology. So I really like to get to know my first level network. So you see all these people with these gigantic audiences and they know nobody and barely anybody likes their stuff. Like, I know a lot of my network really well. Not everybody, but like if I go to a city, I can throw a meetup and like people will show up or come from not that city, but nearby. Like, we've really built up a rapport, whether we work together or not and do different things. So my thing is really get to know your first level connections really well. Try to figure out some friends of friends that they might naturally bring up, or you can just say what you want in the world. Hey, I really want to like meet investors, or I have an innovation summit, which I literally have happening pretty soon, and I want more people to come to it. You get who I am, I get who you are, who are other cool people like us that would like it. And like, it just starts raining and it's incredible.
Talk a little bit more about that. I think what you just touched on is how to ask for an introductions beyond just, here is my target market, I want to make a sale this week.
Correct.
How do you effectively ask for introductions?
So first you build a lot of trust, you make a lot of content, you do a lot of cool stuff. So always help other people, be giving, deliver more value. And I would even say give without the expectation of return, at least for the interaction that you're doing stuff. You can always ask for stuff, but don't keep a scorecard and just be giving. And I think that when you're like that and you change other people's worlds and you can introduce them to people, all the introductions come naturally. Humans that are not narcissistic or something like broken with themselves have a natural action of reciprocity. If I give you a gift, why do you not want to reciprocate? You do want to. So that's a really good way to do it. And then be specific. I think that when people over introduce and they think that they're super connectors, it scares me because that is not a super connector and it's not even an introduction. It's a lazy introduction to give the appearance that I've done stuff. So I expect you to go make introductions for me. Like, I have people, I'll meet them. My first conversation will be something. It might be a nice conversation. It might not. And then like immediately they're just like, so like, can you recommend me about blah, blah, blah service? And like, sometimes I'll literally just say no. I'm like, we just met. I don't know you yet. I don't know if you're good at it. Why? Like, why is that even helpful for you? I don't know. And sometimes they don't even have their game figured out. So like, why are like, sometimes I'll say like, are you really ready for an introduction? Like, how is your personal brand? Have you really sharpened your vision and message? Can you put what you do in a bottle? Can you explain it to a 5-year-old? If you can't answer yes to all of that, maybe fix that. And I'm not being mean. This is from the heart. This is how I talk. I think that that's a lot more helpful for society than just, here's 5,000 introductions.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. I've gotten those type of introductions. As far as face-to-face networking, we have covered a lot of ground in a short period of time.
Yeah.
With everything you said, people are listening. Like, I love a lot of that stuff. If you were to say, when it comes to face-to-face networking, to do it right, at least do this one thing, at least do this, what would you tell people to do?
Don't go to the wrong situation. Before we talk about any of the stuff down the rabbit hole, make sure that's the rabbit hole that you should get into. So I think people thoughtlessly think that they're doing themselves a service by networking. So they go to a place like, let's say they're in New York City, where there could be like 300 simultaneous things. And if I just go to 5 things every night, I'm going to be successful. But you're not. I think people go to too many things that they're not wanted at, or the event is not self-aware, or the meetup, whatever it is, doesn't matter. But why would you go to a situation that doesn't make any sense?
That
right?
makes perfect sense.
Like, if you like the Untouchables, don't bring a knife to a gunfight. That's a little violent, but you get what I'm saying. It's like, it just doesn't make sense, right? Like, if you go to like a siloed thing that everybody is an accountant, who's going to hire you? You might hobnob with other accountants, but why? Why can't you go where you're appreciated? Why can't you go where you're honored? So before I get into tactician mode about stuff and give you LinkedIn tips or whatever, start there because it's much more understood regardless of whether you like LinkedIn or not.
This has been awesome. If people like what they hear, like what they see, where's the best place or places to go online to find you?
Yeah, man. So again, thank you so much. This was a great chat, and I hope everybody else enjoyed. So because my name is such a common first and last name combination, I go by my company's moniker on most social media, which is NowSourcing, and I'm most active on LinkedIn. You can go to nowsourcing.com for all the content marketing and infographic stuff that we didn't really talk about, but that's even better because get to know the person. If you're interested, then you dive in instead of some dumb sales pitches. And as of about a year ago, depending on when this podcast comes out, I also started a global innovation summit last May in the Midwest, and we're getting ready for year two. You can check out more information about that at innovatesummit.com.
Thank you again. This has been great. I appreciate the time, Brian.
Of course, man. Likewise.
Scene.
Ah.